In today's show, the Blazers let go of 3 assistant coaches, and we talk about the Blazers' expiring contracts. Could they be a player in the trade market? Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You listen to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen. Coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's program, we're going to talk about some news in Blazerland, real life news. The Blazers are letting go of 3 assistant coaches. They will have to make some hires, including probably some veteran hires on the front of the bench. This has some implications as Chauncey Billups' original coaching staff has almost completely changed over, now entering his 5th season as the Blazers head coach. Plus, we'll talk a little bit about the Blazers' trade market situation. They've got some expiring contracts for veteran players, or if you don't like the word veteran, for someone who hasn't celebrated their 26th birthday, we'll call them experienced players. They've got some contracts for some experienced players that are expiring this summer, and there's been some reporting out there that the Blazers are at least a team to monitor in that sense. We'll talk about what that means in the second segment. Then we'll close the show. I got some more stray coaching thoughts because you let me start thinking about assistant coaching. Anything is possible. So let's get to the news first. The Blazers, as first reported by Aaron Fentress of the Oregonian, the Trailblazers won't renew the contracts of assistant coaches Roy Rogers, Chris Fleming, and Ryan Gomes. Rogers was a hire on the original Billups staff when Chauncey Billups was hired in the summer of 2021, and Rogers was the defensive coordinator. I think this is notable because the Blazers' biggest improvement this year came on the defensive end, in part because they got better defensive personnel. That is the most important thing that matters. They were able to play bigger for longer stretches. They stopped playing so many negative defensive lineups. I think the addition of Denny Avdia really elevated their defense. Jeremy Grant, I think, had a good defensive season despite forgetting how to make 2-pointers. And Toumani Camara leapt into the one of the 10 or 12 best defenders in the league category. We'll see where he ends up on the all defense teams, but certainly one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. Full stop. Yeah, better defensive players helps. In the second half of the season, they jumped up into the top 5. They had really struggled to begin the season, and they finished right around league average, but this was a massive improvement over prior years, and Rogers was a guy who was charged with leading the defense, and the Blazers are not renewing his contract. Chris Fleming was hired last year. He's a longtime NBA coach, spent about a decade in the NBA, but he came over last year from Chicago, and he was credited by multiple reporters, Fentress and also Jason Quick of The Athletic, and stories throughout the year about his specific development work with Scoot Henderson, working closely with Scoot to watch film, to work on a shot, to build his confidence, do the things that assistant coaches do, but specifically a relationship that he had built with Henderson. Fleming, of course, had come over from Chicago, where he had been credited with a similar role in helping develop Kobe White's game with the Bulls. And Gomes was a player development guy. Was an NBA player, famously not recruited by Rick Pitino for my real heads, but it was Jim Calhoun who famously, I believe it was Jim Calhoun who maybe famously didn't recruit Ryan Gomes. In any case, played in the NBA and worked in player development for the last couple of years for the Blazers. All of those gentlemen are gone. So who's left? Real quick on Fleming. It's very hard to find coaching information out there, like even coaching contract information is not readily and publicly available. Certainly assistant coaching contract information is even harder to track down, but I am surprised to learn that the language from the Oregonian's report is won't renew, which would be meaning that either they had a team option or their contract was expiring. Did Fleming really sign with the Blazers on a 1-year deal or a 1+1 type of thing? That's surprising. I don't think it's necessarily notable in terms of for where the Blazers stand, but I'm surprised to learn that his contract was such that he didn't have multiple years. That is certainly surprising to me. So who's left on the Blazers staff? Nate Bjorkgren, the Blazers lead assistant. You'll see him watching the iPad on the front of the bench. I think he's the only coach in the league that I've noticed watch the iPad on the front of the bench. Nate watches the iPad on the front of the bench. He's the Blazers lead assistant. He's very animated. You'll see him. But the rest of the holdovers are behind the bench guys. Jonah Hurskew, who's been with the Blazers for 3 seasons. Mark Tyndall, who's the last of the remaining of the original Chauncey Billups staff, the last of the staff members from the summer of 2021. Everybody else is gone. Tyndall still around. Ronnie Burrell, also an assistant coach behind the bench. He came over last year. You'll remember last summer, the Blazers fired or did not renew, quote unquote, 2 Blazers assistants at the time, Scott Brooks and also Rodney Billups. But at the time, that felt like this thing where it was like, yeah, they're kind of sending a message to Chauncey Billups. He's entering the final season of his contract, or the final guaranteed year of his contract. He has not shown a lot of progress or promise as a young coach in the league, and they're capping his lead assistant and they're firing his brother. The message is clear: you have to be better. And clearly, this is from the front office. We're bringing in our dudes. Nate Bjorkgren, who worked as a consultant, promoted as a lead assistant. Chris Fleming comes over. Ronnie Burrell was hired in that same string of moves, because the Blazers also lost Steve Hetzel, who left for another job. So in Brooklyn. So but last summer it was like when they changed coaching, they let go of 2 coaches. It's like, okay, well this is clearly a message. This year I don't think there's an obvious takeaway from this. I think it's notable, and it's notable that Billups has now had a complete coaching staff turnover. There's churn in the league, it happens, but I think it's notable that it's like there's nobody left from when he started this job except for Mark Tyndall, who's a behind the bench assistant. Behind the bench, really the differentiation is just like seniority, right? But Hurskew, who's been on the staff for 3 years, Tyndale, who's from 2024, and Ronnie Burrell, who was hired last summer during that string of hires, are behind-the-bench assistants, along with Nate Bjorkgren still holdover on the front of the bench as your lead assistant. In the player development world, where Ryan Gomes worked, you still got Gil Abraham, who's a Blazers director of player development, and Pooh Jeter, who is a Scoots guy and also the assistant GM of the Blazers Rip City Remix team. So I guess he's also the remixes guy as well. He's the G League guy, right? The G League whisperer, from the Ignite to the Remix to the Blazers bench. So the Blazers will have to make hires. They'll have to make 2 front of the bench hires and also a player development hire. They can backfill these jobs. They don't have to go out and hire new players. New coaches. They can backfill these jobs. Jonah Hurskew could get promoted. Mark Tyndale could get promoted. Ronnie Burrell could get promoted. They could promote from within for the player development job. They could hire, one of their video coordinators. Shout out to my guy Jason Lunau of Lewis and Clark fame. Go Pios. They could promote one of the video guys to an assistant coach role, to a behind the bench job, right? Like you classically in the NBA, you climb the steps. Assistant in the video room, head of the video room, assistant coach, front of the bench. You Eric Spoelstra it slowly to like best coach of the 21st century or whatever. So they could promote from within for either of those roles, but based on who they let go, Roy Rogers, a veteran, Chris Fleming, a veteran. You would assume that the hires they make are veteran coaches, right? Just because of the personalities they've lost and because institutional knowledge is incredibly important. I don't know that the Blazers highly value that across their entire organization, but I think it's obvious to value that within the basketball world and particularly on the bench. So I would anticipate that the hires the Blazers make to fill those jobs vacated by Rogers and Fleming are indeed veteran coaches with significant NBA experience to some extent. I wouldn't be surprised if the backfill jobs are lesser known guys, like the person who fills Ryan Gomes' job. If it's someone you've never heard of, they're working in NBA player development. Yeah, that will happen, right? You don't know who Gil Abraham is. Only real Portlanders know who Pooh Jeter is because he's a legend. Go Pilots. So the Blazers have some coaching decisions to make. And I want to talk about this in the third segment. I think coaching staffs are deeply important. I think they're deeply important. But I also think assistant coaches are kind of an unknowable variable. You don't really always know what they do. Eventually you get some reporting. Oh, Chris Fleming works with Scoop, but you don't always know what they do. You don't even if you kind of know, like, oh, he's a defensive coordinator, the nuts and bolts of how they work, because you don't talk to them in the media, because because practices are only open to, at the very end, basically things are wrapped up. Like, you don't really see how it works. It's a truly unknowable variable. And then it's like young guys who come through the ranks, like, you don't know. The only reason I name dropped the Blazers video coordinators because we went to the same freaking college, go Pios. But I don't. Broadly speaking, I don't know. I think you just don't know, and I want to talk about that in the third segment. Real quick though, the Blazers, Chauncey Billups' initial staff: Scott Brooks let go last season, Roy Rogers let go this season, Steve Hatzel left to the Brooklyn Nets at last summer when Jordi Fernandez was hired, and he had a relationship with Fernandez, so he left to go get that job. Adnisha Curry let go after one season. She has not since, from what I can tell, returned to the NBA. And then Milt Palacio, who never coached an NBA game because he was implicated in a health insurance fraud scheme. Things changed quickly in the league, but to have no coaches from 2021, Milt Palacio was let go by the team in October of 2021, and they had to make some changes. There's churn in the league, right? Assistant coaches go get other jobs. They increasingly now they go back to college, right? Because there's big money in the NIL world. But I think it's notable that there has been a full turnover except for one coach. And back then, Mark Tyndall was a player development guy, and he has since been promoted to a behind the bench role as an assistant coach. We'll talk more about assistant coaching in general in the third segment. But in the second segment, what I want to do is talk about changes coming. The Blazers have changes coming on the coaching staff. Will they also have changes that are going to follow along the roster? At least one national reporter thinks they are or has heard whispers that the Blazers are a key team to monitor for potential moves. Let's talk about those potential moves and the common sense that follows. Join me in that second segment, won't ya? Before we do that, though, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. You just grab a paired controller, subscribe, or sign in to your Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to go. Dive into hundreds of premium titles, including EA Sports College Football 25 or Call of Duty. As easily as you stream your favorite shows, you can get out there and play video games as well. Your Fire TV Stick 4K devices makes it already easy for you to watch your streamers, right? So whether you're watching your Hulus or your HBOs or HBO Maxes or Netflix or what have you, but also it lets you create a new console in your home. So say you already are an Xbox owner, but you have it in one room in your house. With a Fire TV Stick, you can move that thing to another room in your house. You can have multiple consoles for a whole heck of a lot cheaper. Or maybe when you're traveling on the go, maybe you have some people staying at your house that are taking up your normal gaming spot. You can have the flexibility and save, and it's a whole heck of a lot cheaper to have that flexibility. So head over to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. That's with the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller, you will get there. You just go to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On. Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On. It's available on select devices, including the Fire TV Stick 4K, the Fire TV Stick 4K Max, and the Fire TV Stick Cube. All right, let's keep it rolling here on Locked On Blazers. I didn't bring this little bit of news I'm about to share with you to the show a week ago when it was first reported because I think it is mostly common sense. And what I like to do on this show is bring, I feel like that's my strength as a host of this show, is that I can synthesize things. I can bring the common sense to you. But there are whispers that are valuable from people who cover the league that I think are worth, even if they follow our sort of common sense world, are worth considering why they are out there. So back on April 23rd, and you were listening to May 1st's show. So, we're more than a week old with this news. But Jake Fisher, who writes for The Stein Line, a newsletter published by Mark Stein and Fisher, a long time, I would say a young veteran newsbreaker who's worked in a couple different places and now is working with Stein on their Substack and newsletter. Fisher reported in a series of a missive that's like, here's the latest, sort of emptying the notebook on everything we've heard about, the latest whispers and rumblings that is, of the transaction cycle that is to come. Fisher reported this on the following on April 23rd. Quote, rival teams project Portland as a key team to monitor for potential moves this offseason, with 4 established players on expiring contracts in 25-26. Anthony Simons, Matisse Thybulle, and big men Robert Williams and DeAndre Ayton. You probably knew that. You're listening to Locked On Blazers in May. You probably are deeply familiar with the Trailblazers contract situation. Or you're my Uncle Matt. Hi, Matt. Thank you for listening. Go Bugs. I think, expiring contracts are tradable pieces. You can connect the dots. Dear listener, you're pretty smart, I bet. Or if you're not pretty smart, let me connect the dots for you. You might be pretty smart, but you might not be able to connect the dots. Those things are not mutually exclusive. Teams that need flexibility would be drawn to expiring contracts, because those teams might say, hey, we value cap space or cap relief rather in 2026, or we want to get off some money and some long-term money, and this is some short-term money that works in a trade but allows us either a season or two earlier of some flexibility. And for the Blazers, when you are dealing with expiring contracts, the clock is ticking in several directions, right? Because it's either ticking such that you quote unquote lose this asset for nothing, right? But also you can just back yourself into a corner where you say well, shoot, we haven't found a trade partner for Anthony Simons. We are approaching the trade deadline, and we don't like the trades that are out there. We didn't make a move in July. We didn't make a move leading up to the trade deadline. We're now hours away, and there's nothing that we like out there. We don't want to let Ant walk in free agency. We're going to re-sign him, right? I think that's, you back yourself into the corner where you say well, we have this dude's bird rights, and we can give him a hefty contract, and we can go over the salary cap as needed to retain him. There's ways that, if for the most part we can keep him on the team if we want to, then you back yourself into re-signing Anthony Simons. You back yourself into re-signing DeAndre Ayton. So the Blazers, indeed, while other teams might be interested in the future salary relief or that flip, the Blazers might be themselves interested in making a move before the moves dictate themselves. All those gentlemen, Simons, Ayton, Thybulle, and Williams, will be unrestricted free agents because they're all off their rookie contracts. So the Blazers won't have the match rights. If those dudes want to leave and choose to leave, they will enter unrestricted free agency with the agency to leave. They will actually be able to, in their true first unrestricted free agent summers, choose where they go. So there is some risk. Even if you do have their bird rights and you can offer them that bigger contract, you're not necessarily going to offer every one of those gentlemen a fat contract, so they could indeed walk. Thybulle has a player option for this coming year, but he's going to pick that up. It's $11 million. There's no way he gets that on the open market coming off the season that he did. I would say it's a I don't know if it's a lock, but it's I put it in the 97 percentile. I would be blown away if Thybulle chooses to enter free agency this summer coming off the season that he just had. I mentioned this is, I just walked you through the sort of obvious logic, right? This is you can just, this is common sense, right? If you follow the league, this is common sense. But I think it's important that Fisher is reporting it, because many of the other newsbreakers in the league, this is a little media literacy for you. I don't do this often, but I think it's really important, and I'm always blown away by the general lack of media literacy from, quite frankly, my listeners. Most of the other newsbreakers in the league bring you a fully baked cake. Here you go. Here's some news. It's already happened. It's about to be official. It's done. They bring you a fully baked cake. Stein and Fisher are the best right now in the league, in the media sphere, at giving you the eggs and the flour, the ingredients that actually go into stuff. Let me give you a little example. Before the season ended, with about a month left in the season, Mark Stein and Fisher, in a co-headlined piece, wrote that there was, for the first time, there were whispers that increasingly the Blazers were open to re-signing Chauncey Billups. They were the only national reporters to report that there was at least some momentum and some interest from the Blazers in re-signing Chauncey Billups. Of course, Chauncey Billups then got re-signed. You know who broke the news? I don't either. Quite frankly, I don't care, because those people are bringing you baked cakes. What Fisher and Stein did was bring you a little bit of eggs and flour. Certainly, they didn't give you the hard, firm, this is going to happen. What they said is, we're hearing some whispers that that more so than it's been in the past, the Blazers are open to re-signing Chauncey Billups. Shoot, you listen to here on this very show with this very host, my voice talking to the locker room, and my opinion, I was telling you the opposite of Stein and Fisher. Now, they're not always right, but it's important to note that they do often bring you they show you how the dang thing is made. Fisher was big last December, that's December of 2024, and that Duop Reith would have real trade interest. And then it was reported several times by the Stein line, or reiterated, I should say, several times by the Stein line. But yeah, the Blazers, there was some interest in Blazers reserve center Duop Reith. Duop, of course, did not get traded, right? But that's the ingredients. It doesn't mean that it's done deal. What they're saying is we've heard indeed that there's trade interest. So that's what I want to point to you here. The fact that rival teams project Portland as a key team to monitor for potential moves is important. It's not necessarily that the Blazers are going to make a move. It's that other teams are looking around the league and thinking about, how are we going to facilitate deals? How are we going to get stuff done? How are bigger moves going to happen? And they're looking to the Pacific Northwest, and they're saying the Blazers could be facilitators. The Blazers could be a team that makes moves. The Blazers could be that helps grease the wheels, because the Blazers have the thing that other teams want, which is expiring money. It doesn't mean the Blazers are going to get back juicy first-round picks. It doesn't mean the Blazers are going to get back massive assets. Typically, when you trade expiring contracts, you do it one of two ways. You kind of take a low, lower offer if you wait all the way to the trade deadline, because teams say it could be a rental, blah, 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 blah. Or if you trade early, or you can also make these trades at the deadline, is you take back big money. Expiring contracts to teams that are, when you're trading straight across, don't particularly have a ton of appeal. But when you are willing to take back some of their money, that's long-term future money for players that are quote-unquote overpaid, or at least players that are too well paid for the team, their current employer, to make the moves they want to make. The Blazers could be a facilitator in that way. And I think that is the interesting thing for the Blazers moving forward. They've talked about patience. They've talked about building the right way. They talked about being smart. If they are indeed willing to do that, part of that commitment is saying, we'll take back somebody's bad contract, because somebody's bad contract can come with a first-round pick. It can come with another interesting young player. If the Blazers are facilitators with these expiring contracts, the way that you have to think about it is not that they're necessarily going to get this sweet deal. It's they're going to get paid to take something back that's unsavory. And how the Blazers can make that happen is important. And as Fisher reported back a week ago, teams are monitoring Portland as a key figure in this. When big trades do happen, the Blazers have some parts that can help big trades happen. And when you facilitate, you can be rewarded. Okay, I mentioned I had some other thoughts on assistant coaches. I do. Join me in the third segment, because I really do think assistant coaching is deeply important. I have a couple examples I'd like to point to, because the Blazers are going to have to make some decisions this summer. And yeah, I didn't want to talk about assistant coaching for 20 straight minutes, so I broke it up. Join me in the third segment, won't you? Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blazers. I think coaching staffs, not just assistant coaching staffs in general are important. Now, I am someone who believes that talent, players, are significantly more important than coaching in and of itself. The sort of bogus formula that I've thrown around before is that coaching, I think, is something like a third of the equation. And it might be as little as a quarter of the equation, right? It's a talent league, talent wins. Roster construction wins, more better players wins. That's what wins in the league, particularly in regular season. You just overwhelm teams with that. But even if you think it's 25% of the equation, and you can think whatever it is, some of y'all really think it's like a 50-50 split, and I support your belief in that, but you will literally never convince me. Do not waste your time. I think coaching is a portion of the equation, but I like to think about it like this. If it's 25% of the equation and you dominate that 25% every night, or you have a massive, massive advantage in that 25% every single night, boy, are you going to have a better chance to win every single game. And if you couple good coaching with superior talent, boy, are you going to have a chance to win a lot of your games, right? Like if you always are winning a quarter of the competition by having the superior coaching group, because you're better prepared, you're better organized, and you're quicker to make the adjustments to get out of the thing that is not working and get into the thing it is, even if it's as simple as like, hey, we got to get a shooter in the game, or hey, we got to get bigger because we need more rebounds. Like the minor adjustments, as opposed to like, we have to set the screen at a lower angle to force them to switch going right because we want to get Denny to his right hand, but if we set the screen too high, they'll go under and we won't get the switch. Like there's some technical stuff you could do, right? But like, I'm talking just like simple stuff like, yeah, get DC out of there. Let's go small. Like that type of thing. If you win that every night and you win it quickly before the other team adjusts, and you win the tactical stuff, hey, this is what they really like to do. Let's get them out of their stuff. Like if you win that portion of the pie every single night, you have a much better chance of winning. I think coaching is incredibly important. I think coaching staffs are a totally unknowable variable for me, right? For some folks, a little bit more plugged in, I think they probably have a much like cleaner way to say like good coaching staff, bad coaching staff. I think in general, the layperson judges coaches almost exclusively by winning and losing. Chauncey Billups lost, bad. Chauncey Billups won, good. I really think sometimes it gets that simple. And that's like mostly anecdotally based on like my email inbox and YouTube comments. But those are people who follow the team, right? Those anecdotes, while small, I do think are a simplified and vocal version of what I think is a silly view on coaching. We mostly view them as win good, lose bad. But the on down the bench, and the Blazers are going to have to fill in this bench, right? Two front of the bench assistants and a behind the bench assistant. And if they backfill those, then some other spots down the line, right? And a player development guy. They've got spots at player development coach and two front of the bench assistants vacancies. Building a really good coaching staff is incredibly important. It's incredibly important, albeit an unknown variable. Let me give you two examples. The first that come to mind whenever I think about this are first the 2014-15 Atlanta Hawks, head coached by Mike Budenholzer. They won 60 games and made the Eastern Conference Finals. Did they get summarily swept out of the finals by LeBron James's Cavs? They absolutely did. They absolutely did. They got wallops, right? I think they lost game 4 by like 30? A lot. What I recall is that it was over and I felt bad for the Hawks, who had 4 All-Stars that year. They were hoopers. They won 60 games. They rocked. Mike Budenholzer was establishing himself as one of the best coaches in the league. And sure, he had an incredible stinker this year in Phoenix, but he was awesome in Atlanta, and he was a championship coach in Milwaukee, and wherever he's been before Phoenix, the teams have been very good on defense and won a bunch of games. Well, look down the end of that bench. Who are the assistants on Budenholzer's staff? Kenny Atkinson, Taylor Jenkins, Darvin Ham, Charles Lee, Ben Sullivan. In 2015, did I know any of those dudes? I was an NBA beat writer at this point. I literally covered the league professionally on a day-to-day basis, traveled around the team, wrote stories for the newspaper, right? Like I was working the league. Did I know any of those dudes? I mean, I knew Darvin Ham because one time he broke a backboard against Carolina. But I don't know any of the rest of them. Kenny Atkinson is the head coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers, who have the best record in the Eastern Conference. Darvin Ham has been a head coach at 2 other spots and took the Lakers to the Western Conference Finals. Taylor Jenkins is the winningest coach in Memphis Grizzlies history. Charles Lee is the head coach of the Charlotte Hornets. And Ben Sullivan is a well-respected assistant and a long-term assistant in the league, Portland's own, Lake Oswego and University of Portland, who also coached at my alma mater, Go Pios. Shout out to Lewis and Clark. Ben Sullivan, who is an assistant on Ime Udoka's staff in Houston. So that's four current head coaches. I guess Taylor Jenkins got fired and Darvin Ham is not. So 4 head coaches, recent head coaches. Darvin Ham very specifically not. He's a Doc Rivers lead assistant in Milwaukee. But 4 recent head coaches in the league who have had varying levels of very good teams, and Charles Lee, who's a totally unknowable factor because he coaches for the Hornets, one of the worst franchises in all of North American professional sports. We'll probably never know if Charles Lee is a good coach until he gets another job. But 4 dudes who were head coaches in the league and Ben Sullivan. Did I know in 2015 that the Hawks had that type of juice on the bench? No idea. But they did, and they won 60 games, and they rocked. Team rocked, and they rocked because they had good players, but they rocked also because they had all this, great coaching staff. The other one I always think of when I think of this is the 2022 Celtics. Head coach Ime Udoka. Udoka, obviously well respected in the league as a tactician, right? Like the Rockets. I'm recording this on Wednesday evening. You're listening to May 1st show, Thursday's program, but the Rockets just beat the snot out of the Warriors. No more snot, and for the Warriors, they will try again in Game 6 because the Rockets dogged them. They beat them down. Udoka obviously, made the finals in 2022 as the head coach of the Celtics. They won 51 games, or 51-21, and made the NBA Finals and lost to Steph Curry's Warriors, those same Warriors who got throttled tonight by Ime Udoka's squad. But on that bench was Will Hardy and Joe Mazzulla. Also, Aaron Miles, Portland's own, Damon Stoudemire, Portland's own, and Ben Sullivan. Portland's own. Let's go, baby. 3 Portland assistants. But Will Hardy, I think, is an excellent young coach in the league, and Joe Mazzulla has proven to be an excellent coach in the league. Did I know in 2022, when I looked down the bench, who Joe Mazzulla was? I guess if you had told me that he was one of the players on Bob Huggins' West Virginia teams, I would have been like, yeah, the point guard that maybe beat Boogie Cousins in the NCAA tournament. Like, I maybe could have remembered that very vaguely, right? But no, I didn't know him. Will Hardy, no idea. If you said, "Oh, it's from the Spurs coaching tree," I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." But I wouldn't know. I didn't know either of those dudes, not in any meaningful way. Will Hardy's a great young coach. Joe Mazzulla's a great young coach. Ime Udoka's a great coach. Ben Sullivan, like I said, well-respected coach. I would say same with Aaron Miles. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets some other looks. Obviously, Damon Stoudemire returned to the college ranks. Coaching matters. It's hard to know this stuff, but as the Blazers try to put together a staff this summer, and then that will lead the team in the fall, they're going to fill these positions, and they'll have to make some decisions. I'm not going to, when they make some hires, I'll read these dudes' Wikipedia page and tell you their background, and if I know someone who knows them, maybe I'll send them a text message, right? But I'm not going to BS you like I have some strong handle on assistant coaching in the league. That's for someone else. Either someone else to BS you or someone else to know that actually have a strong handle on assistant coaching in the league. I'm not going to do that. I want to tell you what I know. And what I know is I probably won't know. It's probably an unknowable variable. And even when the Blazers make these moves and fill these roles, I still won't have any real idea. But, and this is probably only known in hindsight, really strong staffs win games. Really strong staffs win games. Proof over the last decade in Atlanta in 2015 and in Boston in 2022, and probably plenty of other places along the way that I haven't mentioned. A coaching staff is incredibly important to your success of your franchise, and the Blazers have big decisions to make. Even if when they do make them, we're not going to have any idea. Unknowable, but important variables. That is going to do it for today's program and tomorrow's program. Unless some other Blazers news happens, the plan is to talk Toumani Camara heading into your weekend for Friday's show. We'll do a season review of Toumani Camara and look ahead. One of the best defenders in the league and one of the best players on the Blazers all season long. Join me for that one. Tell your friends about the program 5 days a week, wherever they get podcasts, also on YouTube. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.